Hi there, this is Leandra from PaperArtsy. Today we've got a quick video for you showing you a really nice brayer technique. It's a fantastic background technique. I've been using it all year long and people have been begging me to do the video. So I'm not going to just do one video, I'm actually going to do a whole series. So I'd like to start with the really basic level. It's all sort of inspired by Ellen Vargo, because when she started working with the brayer earlier on in the year, she sort of made me remember how I'd used it a lot when I was working with distress inks many years ago. So I've gone back to using it for the paints, and it just produces a fantastic background, really easy to work on. Now these two examples here are using sort of a series of the same colour, so quite sort of monotone shades of orange and red, which is what I'm going to show you shortly. This is in shades of blue, but where I'll be heading in the subsequent videos is showing you the sorts of things you can do if you start to add in lots of other colours and stamping and layers. And you can see that you can work with Ellen stamps, and I've even used some Lynn Brown stamps to create really cool backgrounds in all types of colours, colour combinations. So there's sort of a few tricks that you need to know to be able to make these much more souped up versions. But to start off with, we're going to make pretty much a bright orange background, a bit like this. Before I move on, I just also want to let you know that this technique, you can also do it onto tissue paper. So we've got some nice waxed tissue in the shop at the moment online, and this becomes really strong when you add the paint to it. And of course that means you can use this to wrap around book colours like chipboard, greyboard, or even onto tags and things. And it's just a really fun way to use your tissue paper to create really cool backgrounds and perhaps embellishments along the way. So for today's video, we're going to use different shades of red and orange. I've got a whole range here. I'll probably just use 3 or 4 of those. But the trick is always to start with an opaque. Obviously, when we're working with red and oranges, we don't have any opaques that are in the red-orange spectrum. They're all translucents, as you can see by the chevrons on the front of the paint. Haystack is a very pale yellow, and that one is slightly more opaque. So I'm going to start with that first. So what you're going to need to do this technique is a Ranger mini brayer. You can use other brayers if you like, but the mini brayer I quite like. It's not too big. And also we've got our smoothie stamping card. This is the heavyweight smoothie, but more often than not, I will often use the regular weight, so it doesn't matter, whatever you've got to hand is fine, but it's a super smooth cardstock which is really nice to work on and gives you a great stamping surface at the end. You'll also need a small piece of a craft sheet. This is 1/4 of one of our craft sheets, and you just start with the smallest amount of paint possible. So Haystack is our first colour. So I put a little, like a thumbnail's worth of paint onto the craft sheet, and the first thing that you're going to get a hang of is just feeling how much paint you've got on your brayer. So you need to spread the paint all the way over the palette, and don't apply lots of pressure. If you push really hard, you see what happens? The brayer just skids. So I'm holding the brayer extremely lightly between my fingers, and then I can just roll it very gently. And I think that's the first thing you need to get the hang of with this technique, is you're not applying lots of pressure. So over onto the piece of paper. I start just off the edge, and I'm very lightly letting it roll towards me, hardly any pressure on there. And just as the paint starts to remove off the brayer, then I can add a little bit more pressure, right, to get all of that paint off there. So you see there's no paint left on my brayer. Go back, pick up a little bit more, and turn my page around 90 degrees and do the same thing starting at the other corner. So just flicking it in from the edges. Pick up some more paint, and then the same thing again. Flick it in. And this is such a good way to not get really harsh lines. You need to keep doing this until all the paint runs out on your craft sheet. So if you take a look at the craft sheet here, you can see that there's really not a lot of paint left on there to pick up. So keep pulling that through and keep rotating the piece of paper until it's all gone. So that's the first rule of this technique. Don't switch colour until absolutely all the paint has gone off your craft sheet. Okay, that's colour 1. So now the craft sheet is clean and dry. The brayer is dry, the paint's dry, and the paint is dry on my paper. So that means that we haven't got any buckling. We've not put any wet paint onto the paper so to buckle it. We've not used more paint than what we need to use. So that's colour number 1. Let's notch it up a level. So we'll go to Tango. Small spot of paint, very, very small spot of paint. Just the same as before, put it over the top, same brayer, roll it out and flick it. Start to bring that onto your background. And you kind of want to fill the gaps a little bit. Pick up a bit more. So we've got a nice gap across the top here, so let's start there. And just flick it down. A little bit more. Pick up the paint. And you see, as the less paint you have, the softer the way it goes onto the paper, which is what I really like. I love this contrast between little sort of splatty spots and this really soft application. Right, so that's colour 2. Let's move on to colour 3. What should we go for? How about we do a little bit of brown shed? So this is a sort of a nice rusty orangey brown colour. Again, as you work your way through the paints, you begin to realise that you really don't need a lot. So try to get the smallest spot of paint onto your craft sheet that you can. Let's see, this is a really nice colour. It's an often overlooked colour, brown shed, but I love it. If you like autumnal shades, you'll like it. Okay, that's probably enough of that. Let's go to something a bit brighter. London Bus. Oops, that one needs a shake. Let's just turn it over. There we go. Spread that one out. Now this is one of our most translucent colours, and it feels quite different when you're working with a translucent on the brayer. The translucents feel quite slimy compared to the opaques. And remember, all of these are translucent, so you can always see the layers underneath coming through. Whereas if you work with an opaque, you're going to obliterate and you won't see the layers underneath. Right. Okay, so I'm going to warm it up with some pumpkin soup. Better give that a bit of a shake as well. Pumpkin soup's my go-to colour. I use it all the time for everything because it's just a really nice mustardy yellow. And it will really be good to sort of fill any of these white spaces. And the lighter shades, you can be a bit more ruthless about the application. And here's another little trick with this one's, what is this one? Blood orange. Okay, so if you just want to make a really dark edge, get the smallest spot you can and just ink up or paint, add the paint to half of your brayer. So you see I've just got a very small strip going around the brayer. Then if you take that onto your paper, it's softer in the middle than it is on the edge of the brayer. So if you come down the very side here, see it's soft there and it's going to be a hard edge there. So if I come down the side of the paper, I'll create almost like a dark border from that one colour. And that way you can sort of topically apply paint just at the very edge if you want, with a nice softness coming through into the centre. That can be handy if you're perhaps doing this on a bottom of a tag. But I just like to do that and go around the very edges and just make it a little bit darker. You see how that's really made it much darker in some of the edge areas. Right, back to No, we won't. We haven't used Yellow Submarine. Yellow Submarine is such a nice bright colour. And this really gives it a lift. This is what the translucents are all about, giving it that lift and a bit of zhuzh. Oops. Okay. Now, if we want to use this for stamping, at the moment that's very bright. So how do we make it more soft and subdued like this, which is probably more usable for a background? And the simple thing to do is add snowflake. So, snowflake, same thing, onto your craft sheet. Same sized blob, exactly the same procedure. And it seems a bonkers thing to do, but it will make your background a whole lot more usable. If you want to keep some of this bright for another project, then just tear it off and only make half your background a bit more subdued. So flick it all over and you'll see straight away what it does. It's like a soft focus, it just takes it, knocks it back, but you've still got all that nice colour of the orange underneath. And if you end up knocking it back more than you anticipated, doesn't matter, because you can always come back over the top with more colour again. But if you're a stamper and stamping is what you want to do, then this section will be much more usable than this section, because if you want to come over the top and make something like this where perhaps you stamp an image in black and then colour it in, if your background isn't so dominant, then you'll have a lot more success doing that. So that's video 1 in the series, using monotone shades of Fresco, so colours all in the same family, to make a really simple background. And do check back with us in the next few weeks. We'll have another few set videos in the same series, extending this technique a little bit further. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.